Hello, everybody, and welcome again to the OKD working group meeting. And we'll give everybody a few minutes to join, and the link to the meeting notes is in the chat. And I'm sharing my screen, so I'm going to let you see the notes as we go through and pull the agenda from a few things here. So I'll give everybody a few minutes and
I don't see the screen. For me, it's just a black box.
Oh, really? Anyone else not see the screen, or is it just Christian?
I can see it.
You
I
can see
see
it?
it.
Okay, maybe Christian, come in and come back out again to the meeting,
Yep,
or do you have
that
a dual screen set up, perhaps?
I do.
Trick of the day. I'm on that hidden screen. We're going to give everybody a few minutes while we have lines over there, but all right. Everybody sees it. All right, we'll give Christian. And I'm going to kill my Slack for now so that we don't get that up in the screen too. So as soon as Christian comes back, we'll get started.
And I can see the.
You can see the screen.
I can see the screen now. Yeah.
All right. So if you could, everyone, just add your name into the group meeting notes, and we'll and take as many copious notes as you can. So I have a proposed agenda, and the first item that I wanted to note on today's meeting was I turned a new to me, probably not to all of you, feature in GitHub on for suggesting topics for going forward for the SIG, so that anyone can propose a topic, and as we can see, if you put in an issue in the community repo, these were the proposed topics from last week. Charo reached out and said that he wasn't going to be able to come today. Sam is coming and is going to talk a little bit about, Sam is going to talk a little bit about cluster self-management today with etcd. But if you have a topic in going forward, if you want to get it on the agenda, just make an issue and tag it with the OKD working group proposed topic label, and it will appear magically in the community project, and we will set it up that way going forward, as well as post other meetings. And it's been used successfully by a few other working group SIGs, and I'd like to try that for this, if that's okay with folks. Any feedback? Any objection to trying this out? If not, we'll motor on. And I think everybody is if Brian, if you want to self-mute, if everybody could just self-mute, then when you want to talk, just add yourself in. That would be great. So I'm going to let our fearless other co-chair, Christian, give an update. And I think the first thing you wanted to talk about was the OKD roadmap CFA. So if you want to take that topic on, Christian, and we'll do an FCOS update afterwards. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I just came back from holidays, so I don't really have a huge update on the FCOS side. However, I sent out the OKD roadmap as a call for agreement. They, I think it's the roadmap we already agreed on preliminarily in the working group, and now just to make a formal agreement on it. So that's on the community repo as well. I think it's PR number 55 or something. I sent out an email to all the mailing lists about this as well. It's the same roadmap that we all should already be familiar with. So not a huge update on that side either. Just formalizing this. However, on the FCOS side, I'm still working on getting the CI up for builds of OKD on Fedora CoreOS. And for that, I'm currently writing an enhancement proposal to get that all done in a very formal way as well, and reviewed and accepted by the entire organization, so we can really get some buy-in from all the teams as well on this.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions about the roadmap at this channel at this point in time? Not hearing any. So I put the link to the pull request in here, and as it says in here, if you can indicate your vote as to accepting or rejecting it, that would be great. And hopefully we can get this bit of work done in the not too distant future. The sooner the better. So on today's, let's see if I can actually use this community thing that I've set up. We have one topic that I'd like to seed over the, I'm having fun with my.
Diane, could I bring up a question quickly?
Please do while I mutter around with projects. Go for it.
I was looking over this is Mike McCune, by the way. I was looking over the roadmap again. I thought we had talked about having something on the roadmap about an all-in-one kind of deployment. Are we going to just follow upstream for that, or were there some thoughts about that?
So this is probably something that'll fall into phase 2, and that is after our initial release of OKD4. I'm very open to adding this. I mean, this is probably the code-ready containers thing you are thinking about, right?
Well, it seemed like the discussions around this were kind of bifurcating a little. I don't think anybody's in disagreement, or at least I didn't hear anyone in disagreement about CRC being great for kind of development work. But I had seen some discussion here, and I guess also internally at Red Hat, about a true all-in-one deployment, kind of similar to what we had with OpenShift 3. So I was kind of curious, were we still thinking about trying to push in that direction, or are we just going to kind of follow what upstream does there?
So
downstream, I don't know what to call it, really.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I don't know who can take the answer, the question.
Yeah, I think I tend to think we can talk to Charo about what's going on with the code-ready things, and he agreed to speak at the next working group meeting about that and maybe bring it up there. I think this is my interpretation of all the smoke signals that I've seen, is that it's going to come from using the code-ready containers.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, as a phase 2 goal, this is kind of a little bit of ways away. But I appreciate kind of exploring the topic. So thanks.
Yeah. So we'll have them.
We're definitely open to doing that. It's just in the short term, we really need to sort of tighten down a little bit on the things we work on, just to get the initial release out as soon as possible.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, from the discussions I've seen internally, like breaking away from CRC and doing some sort of all-in-one deployment is really complicated. So I can appreciate that. Thanks.
So I think that maybe what we could do is move on, and Sam, if you I'm going to kill your name, Bachelet.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Bachelet, yep.
Bachelet. Okay, cool. If you could share your screen and maybe take us through this topic of the evolution of cluster self-management with etcd,
Sure.
and we'll cover that topic today, and then we'll have time for Q&A and anything else that we need to do. So thanks for
Okay.
taking
Can you
this
guys
on.
see my screen?
Yep, and I can see Neil too. Hi, Neil. Um,
Hello.
my video is not working, so go for it, Sam.
Okay, so my name's Sam Bachelet. I'm the etcd team lead at Red Hat, and I just wanted to take a little bit of time to go over kind of the evolution of etcd in regards to cluster self-management. Basically, the things I'm going to hit on are kind of the core functionality bits that are utilized in 4.1 and 4.2. Kind of, show the positives and negatives of those, and then how we address them moving forward. As some of you may know, cluster etcd operator is slated for 4.3. We're pushing hard to meet that. So that's the gist, and we'll get started. The first thing that I wanted to talk about is basically how etcd bootstraps today. So today we use SRV discovery to basically facilitate the etcd server knowing who its peers are, allowing it to cluster in that way. So this is an internal mechanism in etcd server, and basically, as far as the bootstrap process goes, I'm assuming that you all are familiar with how that works, but I'll touch on some key points. So basically, we have bootkube, which is running on the bootstrap node, and basically, in order for us to progress and to deploy the CVO, we are waiting for the etcd cluster to bootstrap. So there's a fair amount of time for the nodes to come up. MCO lays down configurations, etcd bootstraps, and then we'll progress so that the rest of the operators can continue. And if you've ever tailed the journal in on the bootstrap node, you'll see the waiting for etcd cluster, and basically we're doing a etcd cuddle call to cluster health and endpoint health for all three members, and once those return success, we progress. So SRV is great, right? It allows us to know a lot about our surroundings from basically just a domain. So this is an example, mycluster.io. If we were to do an SRV lookup, it's going to return the endpoints for the cluster. And this is great. It works fantastic in clouds, generally, when we're using Route 53, et cetera. It's very reliable. But there is a situation that can exist where maybe for whatever reason DNS is lagging. We don't have all the endpoints. This is a failure case that that is unfortunate. And something that we wanted to address moving forward. So in the future, one way to move around this is we no longer rely on SRV internally in etcd server for discovery of the cluster. We actually are going to scale the cluster from the bootstrap node. So one distinct difference between 4.1 and 4.2 and proposed 4.3 would be that we start an etcd instance on the bootstrap node. So by having an actual single node cluster, API server can connect to that, and when we have basically an operational control plane, the CVO can be deployed to the masters much sooner. So this process is much quicker in the process, and then the operator is going to scale out etcd. So we don't have a full cluster to start, but like with the other operators, we're moving to that desired state. And basically our desired state would be a cluster of 4, which is 3 master nodes in the Bootstrap node, and we then scale down safely to 3 once that's complete. And what this will allow, we were just speaking with like the bare metal guys and some other IPI type of installs. Basically, we're hopeful that this kind of circumvents having to wait on the Bootstrap node, and because we can basically scale up as soon as the records are available on a per node basis. So if one's a little slower, it could be the last one to come up. So instead of waiting at Bootstrap, we wait later in the process. So hopefully this, from our tests, this is a lot quicker of a Bootstrap process, and we're excited about that. So the second part I want to talk about is certs. Right now, because etcd has its separate chain of trust for peer and server, and then also an additional separate chain for metrics, which allows us to isolate the KVS, the KV store, away from users directly. So basically, we only want the API server communicating directly with etcd. Basically, today, etcd Cert Signer is stood up on the Bootstrap node, and we're basically spoofing certificate signing requests, so the V1 beta endpoint on the Bootstrap node before the API server is available. And then basically, as we scale up during Bootstrap, we're making those calls to the Bootstrap node, and once that's complete, we tear that down. The API server comes up because it also has this same endpoint. There would be conflict. We're actually using the API server port as well. Just a couple other things to hit on there is basically if we have a single member failure, and unfortunately we can see that. We just recently had a bug in etcd which on the gRPC layer that could cause corruption on the data store. So basically could wipe out a single member on a reboot. And currently that would be a disaster recovery process to return that member to the cluster in 4.1 and 4.2. Not really elegant. And basically day 2 scaling would be a DR operation. We don't really support larger than 3 nodes currently, but if you wanted to, for some use case, scale to 5, for example, it's not something that we could do without manual intervention against the cluster today. So just kind of a quick view of how that works. This is kind of a visual of how during Bootstrap, the master node sends a CSR request to the etcd Cert Signer, again listening on that V1 beta CSR endpoint, and then returns the certs for the peer, server, and metrics. And this works, very well, very efficient. But if a few things. First of all, once we tear down Bootstrap node, that Cert Signer is gone. The API server is listening on that endpoint and cannot facilitate creating certs for etcd, handling those additional signers. So basically, we're sort of stuck if for whatever reason we were to lose a node and have to bring a new one in. That's basically, as I said before, it's a disaster recovery scenario. You have to invoke a bunch of bash scripts, and it's really not very elegant at all. So in the future, the operator handles signing, as far as cert generation. So if there was a failure or restart of a node, IPs change, etc., we spin up those certs on the fly. Also, scale up, scale down is managed by the operator. And one of the coolest things that we just recently had finalized is single member failure resolution. So if let's say, for example, we had a single member failure, 3 node cluster, so we were degraded to 2. the operator sees that that pod is in that etcd member is in crash loop, it will actually remove it from the etcd cluster, restart the static pod. Basically, we pull the spec from MCO's config, and we delete on disk stopping. We return it with the exact copy from MCO, and then we scale back up. So actually, in that DR scenario, which would be 4142, completely automated by the operator. That's pretty exciting. And then I also just wanted to hit on a few kind of roadmap items for etcd itself upstream. So currently we are at 3.3.10. There's been a lot of change come in since 3.14, basically 3.14, 3.15, which was adopted upstream for Cube. Basically addresses a couple big problems that we've had. One of them is the client balancer. We really had a horrible problem dealing with the etcd client balancer and failovers not really working well. We actually ended up having to do like wildcard certs for the peers so that this would work, and it really just makes a mess of logs, etc. Also, because of the old gRPC version, there was that bug that I spoke of where we can basically lose an etcd member through a bug in gRPC. And then we had really nice performance boosts happening on Bbolt, which is our KVS for etcd. So Alibaba actually has a fork of etcd, which they run their database over 40 gigs, right? So etcd's hard limit right now is 8 gigs, but they're running 40, 50, 60 gig clusters. And to do that, they've done some optimizations on the KVS and some other areas using different backends. But this was something that they submitted upstream that we're really excited about, and it'll allow us in the future to support larger databases for etcd. And that comes in 3.3.17, which I'm going to be rolling into 4.3. We were pinning 3.3.15. But we're going to do 3.3.17, so we'll get all of these fixes in there. 3.4, we have some exciting stuff coming in. This has not been adopted upstream yet, but we're pushing for that. So fully concurrent reads right now, if we have large reads against the store, basically we'll end up taking locks against write. So if we have a lot of action going on the read end, it can block write. Obviously a problem under stress. It's something we've been trying to fix for a long time, and that is fixed in 3.4. And then also we implemented RAF learners. I'm not going to get into all the RAF learner details, but basically it's a non-voting member that does not work against quorum, does not count against quorum. Really helps the cluster in dealing with situations where we want to scale, but we don't want to cause a disruption that a current member add would cause. So for just a high level, if we add a member to a cluster, it starts with a blank data store and has to sync that across the wire. Not a big deal for maybe half a gig or a gig, but larger clusters, 6-7 gigs, that can be really not a great thing to be pulling across the wire. In 3.5 is going to be a huge, the 3.5 is unreleased, but RAF learner failover mode. And this will be huge for OpenShift etcd operator, because we can fail over to learners. So basically if we have a failing member, we can just bring up one of these learners that we can have running in the background. Will automatically fail over to it, so that losing quorum can be a lot harder thing to achieve. But we can self-heal much quicker with less disruption, and we can prepare for that earlier in the process. So some exciting stuff on the etcd side, and that's all I have.
Awesome. Are there any questions for Sam now that we have him here, and we are grateful for these insights?
So with etcd, do you have so etcd 3.4 and 3.5 are both unreleased, or only 3.5?
So etcd 3.4 is released, has not been adopted upstream yet, as far as we don't have it pinned to a Cube version as of yet. 3.5 we have not released yet.
Why is there a pinning between Cube versions and etcd versions? My understanding was that the API doesn't really change between major minors of etcd.
Yeah, but there's a lot of different things that happened. Like, for example, in 1.16, we brought in a brand new gRPC version, which was a dramatic jump. The advantages of that pairing require a pairing of client and server. So, for example, the gRPC bug that I was speaking about, which could basically cause corruption. If you were to just deploy the server, you would not have solved the problem because it was actually on the client side. So the API server would have to get a bump. And although it seems that, say, the API doesn't change much, features and all of that stuff need to be really heavily tested. Cube does a great job of doing that. And we really try to be very careful about that matching, and that's why we so etcd team follows upstream as far as that pairing is concerned, because it has the test cycles against both client and server, so that we guarantee that things work as they should, because we found even going from like a 3.2 client and 3.3 server, some problems like in the watch mechanism, so things should work, but they don't always do. So that's
that
really...
means, are we not, and maybe this is, I'm kind of speaking out of ignorance here, aren't we, as within the OpenShift development or whatever, aggressively pushing new versions of etcd to be integrated with development versions of Cube, so that they can get pulled in more quickly? Because if you're doing it at the end of the train, it doesn't seem like it would make a ton of sense and be able to integrate those new features in a timely fashion.
Well, I mean, it's a good point. It's like an upstream, downstream cycles thing as far as our ability to be able to do all of this testing against Cube. So unfortunately, at this point, we really rely on Cube itself to test these pairings. Obviously, as far as OpenShift is concerned, we run a tremendous amount of cycles in CI testing this. When we bring in, like, for example, 1.16, then we're bringing into 4.3. That's going to run through a tremendous amount of cycles, but we don't jump. We're not going to jump ahead of upstream. We adopt upstream as far as those pairings are concerned.
So what I was asking is, why aren't you driving upstream to move to newer versions more quickly?
Well, it's just a cycles thing. It's physical manpower. I mean, we try our best to work with Google and Amazon. So Joe Betts and is a maintainer, Gyuho Lee. Those guys are both involved pretty heavily in pushing those along. We're etcd team just went from 1, being myself, to 3. So we will in the future try to be more involved in that, but it takes time.
Okay.
I'm just going to open up for a second. I think I have people coming in from another meeting, and so if people do, I'm just going to drop them and give them another room to enter. So apologies for that. I'll get that going in the background here. Didn't realize they were using my room for that. So keep going. And I had one If there's no more questions for Sam, are there more questions for him? If not, I had one more question or suggestion, and I'm not sure if I got Christian to add it to the agenda.
Should be on there.
Okay, I'm looking quickly here, and it is. I feel like Christian is the bottleneck for the FCOS work that we need for OKD, and I was wanted just to talk about how we can help him move forward a little bit more quickly. I know you were on PTO, so that was not it wasn't that you weren't working, you weren't working last week. But maybe if you could talk about what your request is as a final thing.
I didn't quite hear what you just said.
If you could, yeah, I'm having some Wi-Fi issues in my my room. If you could talk about agenda item 4, what it is that you're requesting to help you move it on,
Okay.
the work.
Yeah, sure.
That would be great. Thanks.
Yeah. So right now, there's a few different places we need to work on to get the OKD version 4 out. And I was thinking it might be because, yeah, I'm the only one working full time on this. Essentially, we have Steve Green who's working on it part time. He did an internship on the MCO team, and now he's back at uni, but still does work part time for us. Yeah. Other than that, what I was thinking was maybe we could have something like liaison engineers from a few teams that are really involved in this as well, like the installer team, like my own team, that I'm part of, the MCO team, and maybe also from the Fedora side. Yeah, if there's any, I can't really tell anybody to do this, but if we have volunteers for it, I would be very happy to sort of share a bit of the workload.
Well, I mean, at least from the Fedora side, I don't know what we would really need anymore. Like, as far as I can tell, all the pieces are just kind of there. Is there really anything from FCOS that's needed to make OKD work now?
So it's not really in FCOS right now, but we need to set up a CI pipeline for RPM builds on Fedora CoreOS. So we can get the Hypercube, the OC RPMs, and also the machine config daemon RPM into the FCOS composes continually. So yeah, that's one thing I'm writing a proposal for right now, which formally sort of set it as a goal for us in OpenShift to build things on top of Fedora CoreOS with the same sort of importance as on Red Hat CoreOS. So yeah, that's once that proposal is done and we have the CI pipeline, there isn't really a lot of work that needs to go into FCOS. We just need to make sure we get those CI RPM builds into FCOS composes.
So that'll get interesting, because that means that we have to do something about OpenShift 3 being in Fedora right now, because that's also providing like the OC binaries as well as the kubelet and all the other things.
So as we're not there yet, I haven't really thought about how we will approach this. One thing we could do is just not promote the RPMs into Fedora properly and just still use them for our composes, which isn't really the prettiest of ways, but it might just work. In the longer term, we definitely want to find a way, or that's what I want to find, to continuously build RPMs from upstream repos and have them sort of automatically pushed into Fedora repos, or semi-automatically at least.
Well,
So that
we should probably talk to the packet team then, because that's pretty much what they've been working on for the past.
Yeah, I've poked them, but apparently that isn't that important anymore at this stage. So they sort of stopped working on adding a Koji build. Right now, it's very useful for doing a Copper CI builds or RPM builds on Copper continuously. But if we want to do it in Koji, that's not really possible yet with Packet, and they don't put a lot of focus on it right now, as far as I know. So
I have no idea what the point of this is.
Yeah, I thought the a big part of it was actually building packages in Koji and proposing them as possible packages to be automatically sent for updates, right? And
that's what I thought as well.
You can't do that with a Copper build. I haven't actually used Packet myself, but it would be good if we take an action item there to gain some clarity around it, because my understanding is that the whole point of it is to be able to essentially go quicker from upstream to RPM build to update to into Fedora, and hopefully have automated tests along the way so that we remove manual steps. So maybe let's follow up afterwards, Christian, and get with that team and make sure that we're on the same page.
All right, yeah, sounds good. I've poked them already, but I don't really have leverage into getting them to do what we need here. If we can get larger buy-in by some of the relevant managers there, that might be good. And that would be
Is this something
very helpful in either way.
We should invite them to the next working group meeting?
Potentially, because when I met the team at Flock and before that at Red Hat Summit, they were very much about like pushing things into dist-git, getting it to automatically push and make a Bodhi update, have it run tests, and if everything is all gravy, automatically get from Bodhi to push out to release. So like the whole point of it was to make it so that it is as uninvolved as possible to push new releases into Fedora proper. So I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah, so it's probably not worth talking in this meeting much more about that until we, figure out exactly what it does.
Yeah, I just quickly put a link in the chat. I think that's the relevant issue here, upstream on the packet service bot repo. That's definitely one thing. And then, also once we have this, we'll need someone to sort of feel responsible for the RPMs and seeing to it that they always build successfully and everything. So that's why I'm thinking it might be good to have a Fedora CoreOS liaison in the OKD working group as well. And then there is the installer team and the machine config operator team, which I would love to see liaison engineers from as well, because there's just a lot of work that's going to happen that will need to happen there in order to support Ignition Spec version 3.
All right, then. So I don't know anybody on the packet team to ask, Neil. So if you can perhaps log an issue in the community repo and link that packet issue into that and track down somebody for the 29th, or just start an email thread and get them on the OKD working group list, that would probably be very helpful.
Sure, I can give it a shot.
Thank you. I'm learning more things to pass off to other people is my goal in life. Am I really? As everyone can see, and I apologize for it, somebody gave out my Blue Jeans number to another meeting, So they're all popping in here. So thank you for tolerating that. Is there anything else people want to chat about today or bring up? And hearing anyone yelling out. The only other curiosity thing that happened while we were between meetings was the announcement around CentOS Stream, and I don't think that has any impact on what we're doing here, but you know, we'll see where that goes. Yeah, CentOS Stream, and I can add the links to some of the announcements. Are Stream, yeah, not Steam, Stream. And we see if there's any additional resources being added to that to do any work around CentOS, but I don't think so.
I don't think we need to put any work into that right now. I have been told from some community members, though, that they would like to see OKD on CentOS Stream, essentially on built with CentOS Stream packages, which is an interesting idea, I think, and we should definitely look into that again in phase 2 after our initial release.
Yeah, and the people who have come up to me and mentioned that, that's exactly what the message that I've been giving them is that the FCOS work will give them a wonderful pattern and a good resource in you and others to figure out how to do that for CentOS, because there is some still interest in OKD for on CentOS, so I don't want to ignore them. But
definitely, and I think it shouldn't be like once we have everything working on top of Fedora, and when also Red Hat CoreOS and OCP move to Ignition Spec 3, it shouldn't really be hard to adapt to the CentOS packages, because it's essentially all the same. So I think it makes much more sense to just do the groundwork on Spec 3 and the RPMs right now, and then later on have a look at CentOS.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying to people. Go ahead.
How hard would it be to use COSA to build CentOS with the version 2 of the spec?
Very hard, because it's not designed for it.
Well, right COSA now, does that for OCP, for Red Hat CoreOS right now, but it's it's a patched version of COSA, and we're definitely moving to Spec 3 as well with OCP. I think by version 4.4, it's planned right now. So that's definitely coming, and yeah, I don't think the FCOS team would like to work on COSA to make it backward compatible with Spec 2 right now.
I mean, yeah, but between the ignition changes and all the other things that are going on, like RHEL CoreOS right now has a weird snapshot of ignition to support Spec 2 with tiny bits of Spec 3 add-ons to just be enough to work. So and that is not in a released version of COSA that's patched for their use. It's not easy, feasible, or potentially maintainable to do it that way. So either we backport ignition and Spec v3 to CentOS and then start from there, or we just wait for everything to catch up within 4 months and then check again later.
Fair enough.
All right then. And chat. Yeah. Good. Completely agree with Neil on this, Christian. Wonderful. So I can give you all back 15 minutes of your time. And I'm proposing that our next meeting is October 29th at the same time. And I will send that update and the notes and the recording of this back out to the mailing list tomorrow when I land back at my home office and have some bandwidth. And if that's everything we need to talk about, Christian, anything else we need to bring up today?
Diane, yeah, real quick. So you mentioned October 29th at this same time. Are we sticking with UTC, meaning we're going to be at this same exact UTC time? or is daylight savings going to play a role? Did I lose everybody?
Well, I mean, I
Yeah,
heard you. I
I
but
would
Diane
stick
has
to
disappeared.
Diane,
Yes.
are you there? Diane, Marco.
I guess unless Diane returns somehow, we would assume UTC, which means then for you and I, Dusty, this will fall back to being noon again.
Yeah, that's fine with me. It actually doesn't bother me either way. I just want to make sure it's clear because this is
Yeah.
obviously when people get. I have a shared
Ironically-
calendar as far as I understand, so like that would help solve this problem too.
Ironically, it is just now working out for me because my stand-up moved from 11:45 to 1:30, and I just had to miss this my stand-up for this. And so if it's not going to be permanent like this for a while, it just happily works out.
So what time would work for you in 2 weeks, Neil?
In 2 weeks, I mean, I can tolerate missing one more stand-up, and then when November comes around and we flip back to Eastern Standard Time, then it's back to me having to show up during lunch for these things, which is fine. But once we flip back to daylight savings time in May, I think, then it's going to be a little bit more troublesome unless I somehow reschedule everything again. I'm not sure I'm going to be that lucky.
Hi, folks. Sorry, my hotel Wi-Fi failed me there. What was the consensus?
I think a lot of people are saying that sticking with UTC when the daylight savings switch happens is best for most people, but less confusing. But you know, that's what we do in the Fedora Core OS group and what we did with Atomic Host. But it's not a solution for everybody.
So on the 29th, are we sticking with UTC? That's my one question here. Christian, can you make that time?
Yeah, I can make either time. So yeah, I don't really have a strong preference on this. I would take a time where everybody can join. And Neil, you said you can make the same time in 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, I'm going to try. If something happens, I'll discuss it with my team. But if something happens, I'll let you know later. But for now, tentatively, I can say I'll show up, and because essentially after the next meeting, the time drag will change, and I will be doing this during lunch again, like I was before we shifted this.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to let you all go, and I will post all of these notes, and I will listen to the recording so I can hear where I dropped off. And we will meet again in 2 weeks, and hopefully keep moving this all forward. So thank you all for coming, and please do reach out if you need anything or have other topics.
For hosting, Diane, and thanks everybody for joining in.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Take care.